See it.
Right.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, folks, a very warm welcome to you all. Hold on a sec while I get my bloody phone out of the way. It is Thursday, it is 8:30, and you are more than welcome to this week's edition of Mauls, Balls and All, where we discuss everything current in rugby land and as such. And joining me this evening is, as I look at the screen, hold on, we always leave our guests till last. We have Mike Reedy. Mike, how are you? Welcome back after your recent stuff and all that sort of stuff. You won't go into it. We also have Peter Martin, the All Reliable, and we also have the other All Reliable, Dara Weston, is with us, and also making a very welcome return to the show. He is no stranger to us, or indeed Ruck This. He writes a mean article, a very well-written stuff for Ruck This. He's also played for Ireland. He's also played for Ulster. I'm not going to go into your career, Justin. I mentioned it probably the first time you were on. Justin Fitzpatrick, you are very welcome back to the show. How the hell are you? Are you well?
Very well, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. It's always a pleasure. Gentlemen, and the rest, everyone else, sorry, are you all well in yourselves?
Pure finest, Jeff.
Yeah.
Pure finest, yeah. No, Pete, no, hold on. Peter Martin, you let me down there. What do you always say?
Amazing.
Amazing. There you go. There. Dara Weston, you're very quiet. Are you okay? You all right?
Brilliant.
No? All right, brilliant. Okay. Okay, gentlemen, let's get started. Actually, one thing, before we get into all the palaver that's going on in the media sphere about the current rugby world, the sevens being the key. One thing I wanted to ask, Justin, I'll just ask you briefly. It was just something that popped up that I saw, just a brief opinion. It wasn't on the topics list. I just saw today Stuart Lancaster in an interview saying he would he'd love to come back to Ireland. Do you think there's a place for him in a coaching capacity back here, Justin? Just a by the by.
I mean, absolutely. Now, you know, where and in what description, but I mean, his resume speaks for himself. He's very well regarded within Irish rugby circles. He did amazing work at Leinster. You know, he's one of the most forward thinkers, I think, in the game. So, yeah, I mean, if there's money in the pot for him, I would. And I was in charge, I would certainly look at that and bring him back. I think he'd make a great acquisition.
Okay, thanks, Justin. It just something I saw today that popped up. Dara Weston, Stuart Lancaster saying he would love to return to Ireland. Where, as Justin said, like where would he fit?
He could take the place.
Whenever you're ready, Dara. Sorry, what?
I'm having Wi-Fi issues.
Oh, yeah? Oh.
You are indeed.
Can you hear us? Okay, Dara, if you want to log... Intermittently, Dara, intermittently. Do you want to log off and log back in again and we come back to you? Try that. Okay. Peter Martin, your thoughts, Stuart Lancaster.
I saw the off the ball snippet online for whatever, and I just as I posted on that, can't remember who it was who posted, but it's like that's to come and get me, as far as I can see. Like he literally said like he loves. It's not just that he misses the rugby aspect; he misses Ireland. It's like Jesus Christ. Yeah. Get him a house, get him set up, get him here, kind of thing. You know, it's like it's if that isn't a come and get me, I don't know what is. Like, I just thought it was very, very apparent. It hasn't worked out at Racing for. I think the whole thing with Jackie Lorenzetti is a bit of an awkward individual, I think, to deal with, and I think there was various different things didn't happen from him, but like he's coming back to a setup that he knows intimately so well, and the players know him so well. It's like I put it to you like this: it would be a monumental fuck up if he didn't get back here. if he wasn't brought back in some shape, way, or form. I hope David Humphreys is watching this because
He probably will. We know the IRFU watch this.
Yeah. Well, anyway, good, great that they do. But like, who else? We've already said it. Like, Leo Cullen has to be under serious pressure now. And there's no guarantees the URC is going to be won by Leinster. Absolutely none. We know that. We haven't won it when we've been in the box seat for the last few years. So I just think, there's a deal to be done. Let's do it.
Would you have him coming in, Pete, as taking over from Leo? Or sorry,
Absolutely.
Leo going to director rugby and Stuart.
Leo director rugby. He's effectively that already in my book.
Yeah.
No, just Stuart in. Not sure where Nienaber would fit in with the whole, because I think it's like, basically, I think their coaching their coaching philosophies, to my mind, maybe just as a thought in this, it's water and oil. Do you know what I mean? It's I just thought I couldn't possibly see how Nienaber and Lancaster's, the way they view rugby, I cannot see them working in tandem.
Mike, before we come to you, okay, Mike, before we come to you, Justin, do you want to answer Pete's question there? Water and oil, Lancaster.
And you may be right, Pete. I don't know. I've never worked with either of those individuals, and I've played alongside Leo, and he's a smart operator, and he's a good man manager. He always was as a player. He was a great captain. So he would be better placed to know whether those two individuals that he knows intimately could work together, right? And if he can, and does it have to be back to Leinster? Is there another role there for him to float between the different provinces and help the coaching staff? I remember Les Kiss used to do that quite frequently. Used to come to and others to the different provinces and help upskill and drop in ideas, and that was always very interesting and welcome by players and coaches, I felt. So maybe that's the route. Leo will know him, and so will many others within who are actually signing the checks within the RFU as to whether or not that's a workable solution, and where, if they are going to go that route, where to fit him in.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Okay, Mike, welcome back to her. Mike, go on. Your thoughts on this?
I think I made my thoughts pretty clear a couple of weeks ago after the Northampton game. What I felt should happen. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Nienaber's time is up, and I would go cap in hand to Stuart Lancaster and bring him back in. No question about it.
Why do you think Nienaber's time is up?
I think it's been a catastrophic failure, if I'm honest. This Nienaber, they called it an Nienaber effect. What effect has it done? The actual concept, the concept of the rush defence is an absolute failed concept, and I guarantee I actually put a bet on it that South Africa will not use it come next World Cup. They will not be using that. It cannot succeed. Not with the DNA of Irish rugby players. We don't have speedsters on the wings to play that style. Munster or Leinster were absolutely exposed at will by an average. Let's be honest, this is not the best Northampton side ever, and they were absolutely ripped.
They weren't that bad now, Mike. They weren't that bad.
No, they're not. Oh, listen, they're a very, very good side. They're a very, very good side, but they didn't have an awful lot to do, Peter, to rip that defence to shreds.
Yeah, okay, we're not going. Okay,
I'm not. But I see another role. I mean, Connacht are in need now of a coach, and there's people talking about Dan McFarlane. My God, no, please no. No. But like he'll fill any role, any capacity in any of the four provinces, and I bet he'd be happy.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Mike, and the semi rant, which you are well known for. Dara Weston, have you got your Wi-Fi sorted? Yeah, we can hear you. Yes, but you're a bit kind of jumpy on the screen. Hopefully your Wi-Fi is okay. Just a brief one. Stuart Lancaster said he would love to come back to Ireland. Where would he fit in as Justin, Pete, and not so much Mike have referenced?
I think he could fit in anywhere really within the
the provincial or national setups. But yeah, it's whether, given other events this current week, whether they can afford to be seen to be paying big money to get a high-profile coach in.
Yeah, true. Okay. All right, let's get on to the main story, gentlemen. Justin, to you first. You wrote an article, Justin, for your own LinkedIn page and also for Rook This. And your headline for the article was Sevens in Retreat, the rise, shrink and uncertain future of rugby's global carnival. Now, that was the day before the IRFU made the announcement, which I'll read, but just your initial thoughts, Justin, and then we'll go into more details about the whole setup. But your initial thoughts, Justin.
Yeah, I think first and foremost for the Irish players that have, that are going to be potentially out of work at the end of the next wee while, I feel very, very sorry for those games. That's very sad. I think internationally and from an Irish perspective, this is downstream from COVID. Not everything, but downstream. But all the unions plus World Rugby lost a lot of money over that period of time, and that's where this is a financial decision, and it's made it very, very difficult with shrinking from 16 teams to 8 teams to really.
You said that in your article.
Yeah, to justify it. No, that's what I believe. Because if you're not in that top 4, you're this far away from dropping down. And I don't know how the funding looks on the Irish side, but I know how it looks in other places. And a lot of it's tied to Olympic committees and where you place in the run up to certain Olympics. If you're not in that top 4 and you drop down, you're one result away potentially from dropping into the second tier, and the money gets cut, right? You've got to make that money up with something else. So I can understand how some humans around the world are looking at this and thinking, this is going to be very, very difficult to manage, so that concerned me when they did that, and then obviously we see the union doing it, and I think again they've lost a lot of money over the COVID period, like everything else, and have got to put their priorities where they best think they're going to get a return.
Now, Terry Kennedy had something to say about that. Now, there's a couple of things now I have now to read out before we go on to our next one. Peter Martin, your initial thoughts on what I've asked Justin there.
Yeah, I think it's dreadful news. Apart from obviously the players who are going to be affected, I'm thinking in my head, my initial reaction as well. We're not going to get another Hugo Keenan as a result of the program not being there. There's not a chance for a Zach Ward, or indeed, it's a proven pathway. Yes, there are different types of players who end up playing. You have to be a particular type of player, to play sevens. But, it's not a question of there's going to be a group of players and they fit a particular style, their type of character probably as well, and they're for sevens, and that's them, and that's totally separate. We've seen in the last number of years that there are guys who played sevens, and it's not just with Ireland. We've seen it with different countries where guys who shone at sevens, particularly, I suppose, the Fijians are the best example of it. But South Africans have players as well who've played sevens in the past, and they've ended up being Springboks. It's a proven pathway internationally and I think we're going to lose it as well. I also think that it's a potential pathway if we're looking for fresh blood into the game. Where I'm going with that is I think the likes of Gaelic footballers, GAA, can hook into that, because GAA players, it's the level of fitness that's required for GAA. It's more aerobic, it's less powerful, it's less explosive than rugby. But with sevens, in my head anyway, I'm not a fitness expert, but there would be a certain amount of a crossover there. You know, you've got guys who've got have to be very explosive on a sevens pitch, serious speed, serious aerobic ability, but also have a certain amount of power there as well. I just think, you know, you could potentially get a group of guys who are playing Gaelic, maybe, you know, disillusioned because GAA are doing so much with these development squads and so on. And guys who would be just saying, I'm pissed off sitting on a bench. I want to play a game.
Yeah.
They get involved with rugby and hang on a minute. You're not going into a 15s, try sevens, and it could absolutely work. It could be a feeder program.
Yeah,
and I think that's gone from a game development perspective. Never mind those who are, you know, kind of just in that seven space and are looking to represent their country. I think it's a dreadful shame, and I think it could be a mistake.
Okay, we will further analyse all this. Just before I come on to you, Mike Reedy, about this, just a few people watching. Let me see. Bevan Marie. Hello, guys. Hope you're well. Thank you, Bevan. Gregor Galway. Evening, all. Megan Augusta. Evening, gentlemen. Hello, Megan. How are you? Johan is kind of taking the piss out of Matt Boland here. Johan, fuck, there's no Matt Boland tonight. Yes. Matt Boland is known for his blue language, should we say. We're all guilty of it. So, anyway.
He's not that fucking bad, to be clear.
He's not that fucking bad, no. Bev Amory, apparently Lancaster said no to head coach Connacht because the pay was too low. Oh, all right. I didn't hear that. Anyone else hear that? I didn't hear that.
I would have thought provincial coaches had similar pay bands across the provinces.
I've no idea there. Johan again,
Yeah.
Leinster releasing some very talented players. Where is Eights-Old King going? At Dara, do you have any Clontarf inside info? There you go, Dara. Any inside info on that?
I'll see you down the clubhouse, Johan, and I'll fill you in.
There you go. All right, Mike Reedy, any thoughts on the topic we were talking about, which I completely...
I think all these financial matters are as a direct knock-on from our finishing position in the Six Nations.
No, it's not. It's not. I was reading the thing. It's not about this year's Six Nations.
They might very well say that, Peter, but why are all these financial issues becoming relevant now? Something had to give. That's since both our women and men's teams did exceptionally well at the Olympic Games. We didn't medal or anything like that, but we acquitted ourselves very, very well for our first entry into such a tournament. But the reality of sevens rugby as well is you get a tournament, even the Dubai Sevens or the Hong Kong Sevens. Now they'd be the two flagship events probably in World Sevens rugby, and you'd have 10 teams playing like in a competition, and you might get 30,000 people there, like representing the 10 teams. So if it's not financially making enough money to sustain itself, it's the rugby union has to draw a line somewhere, you know. And I think it's a crying shame, because like Peter Martin just said there, you know, the players that have come through and the potential for players to come through in the future is basically being scrapped now, isn't it? And I mean, and like Justin said as well, the guys that are currently playing are basically going to be unemployed or something at the end of this current series of games. So I don't know what. It's very, very sad for Irish rugby and for World Sevens rugby, because if Ireland are struggling, I'm damn sure that other unions are going to be struggling as well.
Okay.
This might be only the start of a domino effect.
Yes. So yeah. True, Mike. Yeah.
That was a fairly underwhelming rant, if you don't mind me saying, Mike.
It was, in fairness, wasn't it? It wasn't. Yeah. There was no huge rant going on there. Come on, Jerry. Your thoughts on all this?
You know, he definitely didn't put two hips into that. I said there's only one hip gone into that rant.
He's only got one good hip anyway. Shakira.
I'm only half bionic.
Yeah. So look, I think from what Justin said, the HSBC Sevens in the last couple of years has gone from 16 teams now to 8 teams at each tournament. That hasn't helped. But if you look at what were the certainly the big female star to come out of the Olympics was Ilona Maher, women's sevens. And now she's playing in Bristol on 15s. She's like the most followed rugby player on social medias. You had Dupont winning the gold with the French men's team. So, like, there couldn't have been more of a hype around sevens rugby coming off the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Then sevens is the kind of the safer alternative, as in there's less contact than 15s rugby. So for people who are maybe worried about too much contact for their children playing 15s, sevens is an option. And I just think it's kind of, I know what Mike's saying about, okay, you know, the money that was lost over COVID and all that, by Jesus, the ticket prices have gone up something shocking since COVID. So, you know, I mean, they're looking to recoup the losses. And look, you have to make hay while the sun shines. You know, well, there's the demand out there to fill the Aviva. Obviously, they're going to increase prices, you know, if they can fill it twice. But, I mean, Harry McNulty said that the cost of the men's sevens program was less than the cost of one central contract. So that's the entire sevens program, men's sevens program, was less than the cost of one central contract.
I'm going to come on to that.
So, I mean, that would imply that they're saving less than $1 million. So, you know, it's hard to see in the grand scheme of things. They're losing half of the sevens infrastructure they have. As Peter Martin said, they're losing a gateway through to 15s, you know, and it's just, for quite frankly, in the overall scheme of things from the IRFU's bank account, very little return. You know, they're not getting back 10% of their budget by getting rid of this. So okay. I don't know. I failed to see the logic behind it.
All right, let me, Justin, before I come on to you, just let me just read out. Now, there's a couple of these read out things. Let me just start with the IRFU statement, Justin, and let me just ask you if you agree with this or what the issue with this is. The IRFU statement is as such. The IRFU has today confirmed, let me just put it up here so I'm not putting my head down for the camera. The IRFU has today confirmed that following a comprehensive review of its sevens programs after the conclusion of the 2024 Olympic cycle, it has made the decision to cease the men's sevens program following the conclusion of the 2024-2025 season. This move is part of a broader strategic effort to ensure long-term financial sustainability and focus on key initiatives outlined in the union's strategic plan. The IRFU has confirmed that the women's sevens program will remain operational as a key development pathway for the women's 15s program. So why didn't they, Justin, keep the men's sevens for a key pathway program to the 15s?
Well, I mean, I can see where they're coming from. I mean, I'm sad. I mean, I'm not a sevens aficionado. You know, I'm an old heavy prop. But I've seen how here in North America how it's been used to good effect to Pete's point about bringing in crossover athletes and introducing them to the game. And I think that's a very interesting point you make, Pete, about potential Gaelic players, right? Here, it's more about basketball or football players, but there's been some great returns, you know, on that. Perry Baker, Carlin Isles, for example. And I think, you know, and you know, to one of the other points that was made, you look at some of the other unions, South Africa, New Zealand, they constantly turn out players from their sevens program. Jonah Luma was a sevens player before he was a 15s guy, you know, and the list goes on. So that there is potential for it, but I think you've got to look. As I said earlier, all of this is downstream of COVID. You know, money was hemorrhaged during that period. So I can see what they're doing. And also, if we look back of what's been talked about and what we spoke about last time I was on the show, there's a lot of rejigging of priorities to build up, and rightfully so, I think, the pathways in Connacht, Munster, and Ulster while you've got to, keep the golden goose laying its eggs and make sure that Leinster is, which provides the guts of the Irish players at the moment, is successful. So that's, I would guess, number one priority, because that all feeds into the Irish national team, which provides the lion's share of the money that feeds everything else. You've got to understand that most of the other things that is done with union coin doesn't make money or makes very little money. The national team, the men's national team, funds everything. So I can see the logic they're using. Personally, I'm just disappointed because I think there's, as we've discussed, a role there for sevens to be an alternative pathway. Where's the next Dennis Hickey coming from? An out-and-out speedster. You guys have discussed that previously. We haven't got someone with out-and-out pace. Sevens tends to be a great, amongst other things, a great mechanism to get meaningful minutes for someone like that who's got just outstanding pace, right? But perhaps needs a little bit more time to develop meaningful minutes before he's ready to transition to a provincial or an international 15s spot. But no, I can see the logic. Disappointed, and I think it's not just we've obviously got an Irish focus here, but from the world game, going from 16 teams down to 12 teams this current year, and then down to 8 teams. There's too much jeopardy, and dropping down, from one year to the next, because you don't plan budget for 1 year, you plan over an Olympic cycle. So, and if you have a couple of bad results and you drop out of that top division, the competition standard's lower. You have to go to the back pitches. I mean, listening to the US guys talking last week, the LA Sevens, they were all on the back pitch in their own competition in their own country. That's not good for fans, spectators, and you look at some of the other sides there that have come through. Portugal was more successful in the sevens arena, and they were able to leverage that and help build up their 15s. Fiji, as we spoke about over the last 30 years, now they're starting to come through on the 15s, but it was built on that strong sevens foundation. So there's, I understand why they're doing it, but I feel internationally, and this comes, from that 16, 12 now to 8, it makes it very difficult to justify.
But Justin, someone, I won't say someone, I know exactly who they were. They sent me a message saying that does the women's sevens pathway, are the women more successful at translating overlapping sevens into the women's 15s than the men are?
Currently, yes, and
Okay.
And you've got to, I would think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, if you look at Irish men's rugby, there's a much broader base to it, so there's, you've got a school system, a club system, there's a lot more players playing, so you can pick those players out, and historically we've been very good at profiling players, and still are, and there's some improvements, and they're putting money into it and bringing them up into underage and then senior internationals. The women's game currently isn't that big, right, compared to some of the other places. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but I'd say there's a lot less Irish women playing than there are in the US or Canada, certainly England or France, right? So, it's a smart stratagem in my mind to be able to, if you look at the profile of a lot of those players, they're coming, as Peter rightly said, they're crossover athletes. They're coming from athletics or Gaelic or camogie or whatever, right? So soccer. So that's it's a quick way to mainstream talent into a broader program. There's a bit more work to do in the men's, and the systems are broader and a lot more refined at the moment, right? So it doesn't make the same argument, if that makes sense.
Okay. Very good. Okay, Mike Reedy, before I come to you, just a few comments from people watching. Bevan, surely the women's is bringing in less than men, so why get rid of only the men's? This is what we're talking about, Bevan. I don't know. Joe Shep, good evening, Joe. Evening, gents.
Joe.
Joe Shep also says, It'd be very interesting to see the overall cost per annum for the entire men's sevens program. Then look at how much was being paid by Sport Ireland, the sevens main sponsor, and the IRFU. Okay, we'll have a chat about the finances, Joe, in just one sec. Matt Boland staying true to form. It's a load of fucking shite, let's be honest. Good man, Matt. There you go. Okay, Mike Reedy, your thoughts on the IRFU statement that I asked Justin, and the idea that, and Bevan said it is agreeing with me there, that the women is bringing in, sorry, Bevan, I'm misreading your point, but the women's sevens, it seems to be more successful into the women's 15 than the men's sevens had. But also, Mike, the IRFU statement about this whole thing.
Well, as regards the IRFU statement, it's smoke mirrors. You know, it's fucking nonsense, really. It's a cop out. But they should have just come out and said, we currently cannot afford this program. We have to draw a line under it. If they just done that and were upfront and honest about it and told all the players prior to it, I think there'd be less furore. As regards transitioning, I mean, it's already proven successful. Even this year, Zach Ward has come through the sevens and is now playing 15s for Ulster, and that's a massive success. Now the women's main reason for women's transition is physicality. The physicality of the men's 15s game is massive compared to sevens, and in women's it's slightly different. It's more athletic and skill based than probably physicality. There is a hell of a lot of physicality in women's 15s rugby as well, but it's probably more easily to transition across from women's sevens to 15s. If you were a really rapid winger or something like that in sevens rugby, women's rugby, they're going to be an asset to any 15 side, and because you don't have the same level of umph, and it's not all about big hit stuff. So, but I think sorry, it's a crying shame, but just be honest. Let the IRFU be honest why it's no longer there.
Look, when's the last time a corporation has ever been honest with the general public? Right? Really?
Well, exactly.
There you go, Peter Martin. Your thoughts on all this?
I think that this as what's been said already, so it's massively disappointing. The IRFU statement, I think, is bullshit. There's not a chance they could go near the women's game. I'd say the way it was is that if only the IRFU made an absolute cock up of the women's game, I'd say the women's program would be gone.
Probably, yeah.
I'd say it was a PR decision to say we can't, after doing what they did last year and basically trying to build up and trying to I suppose, doing what they've done with the women's game, with the kind of the significant improvement we've seen with the women's game. With Scott Bammond coming in after Adam Briggs and our former guest on here,
Greg McWilliams.
They simply could not turn around and say, "Sorry, girls, we're cutting the sevens." They simply could not. It'd be the biggest PR disaster. So I'm sure they just had to go with the men's program. That's as simple as that. We have to cut it. They basically kind of had their head in their hand, running around their hair on fire, saying, "We have to cut something. What are we going to cut? What are we going to cut? Fuck it. It's going to have to be the men's," and that's it. It makes no sense.
I tell you what, Pete. I tell you what, Pete.
Aren't enough. So that's bonkers decision. It could be, but that's what it came down to. Something has to give.
I think the point you're making, Pete, is brilliant in its simplicity. I think that's exactly what happened. The IRFU said, "Well, look, the men's sevens is not financially viable." As kind of is the underlying point that was made by their statement and by everyone here so far.
I would say that the men's program is actually still extremely viable. and I'd say it's borderline. It's on the cusp of being particularly successful. But they've just said we just have to cut something. So it'll be a PR disaster to cut the women. So let's cut the men's.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, Pete. I totally get the point you're making. Dara Weston, your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I think Pete hit the nail on the head. They're taking off to shoot themselves in the foot, but they're not going to shoot themselves in the face by cutting the women's sevens. Because, it's not that long ago that the women's national team were changing in car parks because there wasn't proper changing facilities, etc. Yeah. So I think they've realised, and also, I mean, is sevens a gateway through to 15s? Because, as everybody else has said, there isn't the same school set up that the men's team benefit from for the women's team, and it's they need all the gateways they can to the senior squad, to the senior 15 squad. Look, I mean, the year after the Olympics, I suppose, is the time to cut a sevens program rather than the year before the Olympics. It's easy to do it because nobody's going to talk about it for another 3 years until it comes up to the LA Olympics, and then they're like, "Where's our sevens team? Oh yeah, we don't have one. We cut it 3 years ago." So,
yeah, all right. So. Okay, Justin, just another one of these readout things. Harry McNulty on Instagram. He said one of the worst decisions the IRFU could have ever made. Second in the world, bronze in the World Cup, World Player of the Year, and many more accolades. Short-sighted, and will 100% decrease the level of the 15s game. Would you agree with that, Justin?
Some of it, not all of it, right? And as I said, I mean, there's an old adage, show me where the money's going, and I'll show you where the priorities are, right? And we don't know all the backstory, but there's been enough written about rejigging and re-energizing the Munster, Leinster, and Ulster's pathway, which it isn't delivering to the level it has historically. Right, so they're putting their money into that. As was mentioned there, the women's game has been underfunded for a long time, and now it's not. Right, first with the sevens, and more recently with the 15s, and we're showing results on that. And that will help feed that game. And but not most important, but probably most financially important, the men's provincial teams have to be successful because they fund the Irish national team. The Irish national team is the golden goose that funds everything, right? So I'm sure the bean counters have pragmatically looked at this and like, okay, all right, we've got to put some assets here. We've got to rejig the balance. And while I'm going to say I'm a big sevens fan, although I was never a sevens player, and I do see all the pros in having it. I can understand what they're doing, and there's too much jeopardy with only 8 teams in the World Series circuit. You're 2 results on 2 tournaments to being at the bottom of the group, and the drop off is massive. So is the juice worth the squeeze, right? It's too competitive within that 8 sides, to not look at that pragmatically would be my take on it.
Okay.
The only thing, I'd agree with what you say, Justin, but the only thing is it's incredibly sad that they don't give it a shot and see, if after a season of playing we're out of, the top 8 in 6 out of the 8 tournaments, say, then review it and say, okay, I think if the 7th squad had gotten a hold of Crowley's manager, they might have still had funding for this year. He was able to squeeze a pony contract out of the IRFU for Crowley. So, maybe, if there was similar kind of rumors that all the 7s were going to go off somewhere.
Well, Darren, you touch upon a really, really important point, and I look at how things are done in North America, sometimes poorly and sometimes with a lot of innovation. And I wonder whether there was a third way here, whether there were individuals or a group or a company, because you're not talking massive amounts of money to run the men's in relative terms in over the course of a year, whether there was an opportunity or time to bring together potentially a consortium or a corporation or something to come in and do it, because there's a lot of residual glow to medaling in the Olympics, right? And I strongly believe there's plenty of talent and we want a million miles with it away from it. In fairness to Jimmy Topping, he's done an outstanding job with the men's national team. So was there a third way there? I understand what the RFU and David Humphreys are doing. I can see the logic, while emotionally, I would like to see, the Sevens program move on. But was there a third way there to keep that program going and push it on for everyone's benefit?
Well, I've got a solution to what you were saying. The Qataris and the Saudi Arabians are desperate to get into rugby. Why are they not fucking feeding? Why are they not feeding into that market? Why don't they go and cap in hands to them and say this is your way into rugby if you're really that desperate to get involved and have tournaments. You could even have those tournaments like that in places like Qatar.
I'm changing your nickname to Shakira Trump. Okay.
Shakira. Why?
Your dodgy hip and your love for Qatar. All right.
No, I'm not fucking love. I've no love for Qatar at all. I'm just wondering.
He makes a fair point.
Money. That's all I want.
They just want the Rugby World Cup.
I just want their money
they've no
for
interest in
rugby.
co-hosting.
Peter Martin, your thoughts on what McNulty said? One of the worst decisions the IRFU have ever made.
Yeah, look. We're I think we're all. I don't think there's anybody who's come out with a strong counter argument other than it's the financials. Like that's just it. Like he's obviously, himself and Terry Kennedy with their statements, very hurt, feel very passionate about it. They, as two guys in the front line who've represented our country, Terry Kennedy being a World Player of the Year, which is a fantastic achievement. Because let's face it, you'd expect, that to be a Southern Hemisphere, own that kind of thing. The Fijians and Australians and New Zealanders and so on. But look, it is what it is. Like, there's a fair bit of emotion around it from those involved in sevens at the moment. Obviously, their livelihood is effectively gone.
Yeah. Okay. Just before we move on, I'm actually going to read what Terry Kennedy said, and this brings in the whole financial aspect of it. But before we do that, Luke Conway. Hi, Peter. Hi, Luke. How are you? Kieran Ryan. Even everyone, it's been a proven way of bringing players through to the 15s all over the world. IRFU turning people away from the game at a time when we must look to the future for all Irish teams. Hello, Kieran. How are you? A fair enough comment, Kieran. Yeah. Now, Justin, Terry Kennedy. He wasn't happy at all. Right. This is coming back to do the financial aspect of it. Terry Kennedy, it's a long quote. I'm not going to read it all. He says, no mention of the millions paid to, he was obviously criticizing the lack of funding, etc. He says, no mention of millions paid to bring foreign players over on short-term contracts. Ooh, dig at Leinster.
Oops.
And the budget to pay for committee members travelling to Six Nations games and tours with lunches and dinners, far more than the whole sevens budget. Justin, that's Terry Kennedy. He's not happy with this thing, this idea at all.
That's his job, he wouldn't be.
No.
Yeah, as I said, look, emotionally, I'd love to see the sevens program coming on. I do understand where they're going at, and we've got to understand the amount of money that is floating around in the 15s game. You compare to what the French teams, I would say, off the top of my head, there's very few French teams in the top 14 that have a budget less than Leinster's, and some of them have a budget
twice that of Leinster's.
Yes, absolutely, right. So the union is financially prudent and delivering results on that, but it does cost money bringing in and plugging in foreign players, which has immediate on the field benefits, but it also exposes players. The union's made it very clear it doesn't want players to go overseas. It wants them to stay where they can be managed in the provinces. I get that, but having someone who moved from London Irish to Ulster to Castle Olympic back to Ulster, you do benefit from, in my opinion, from different environments, mixing with different players from different parts of the world. Keeping them all in the provinces and having that little bit of a world-class foreign exposure does add flavour and experience and different approaches and different standards to a squad. So I think that that's it's very, very, very worthwhile. What we have to do, and we've talked about this, you guys talked about this a lot, and you're right, we've got to bring up Munster, Ulster, Connacht, right? That's not just the RFU's responsibility. There's got to be good work, and as we spoke about the last time I was on, there's great work going on in Ulster that I think will bring green shoots pushing through over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. But that costs money. It costs money to build to reinforce a pathway. To put extra resources in it, and and get those provinces up to speed. So we're having more than one team in a semi-final. We're perhaps having an all-Ireland final for a URC or a European Cup or whatever. There's only so much money in the pot.
But then again, the holding company for the Aviva Stadium, which is jointly owned by the FAI and the IRFU, announced 7 million profits.
Yeah, but how much did we lose over COVID, right?
Well, look, true, but look, I'm not an accountant.
No.
So
Peter, can I give you some financial figures from the IRFU's annual report?
Go on.
So 23-24 season, international rugby income brought in 32 million. Commercial income brought in nearly 15 million. Amortized income, Peter Martin will have to explain that. I don't know what that is. That's nearly 16 million. And provincial competition income brought in nearly 9 million. They also got other rugby income of 1.25 million, grants of 4.3 million, and miscellaneous income of 2 million. I don't know, signed pictures of Dennis Hickey or something like that.
That was made by points in the Aviva.
All right. Player management costs. This is now just the male senior team. Player management costs 38.6 million.
Wow.
Then if we go down under elite development, the women's 15 team, 4.4 million. The sevens, that's men's and women's sevens, the whole program, 4.2 million.
Okay.
So
okay.
It's basically the grants that the IRFU got last year of 4.3 million.
Pay for the sevens.
Covered the whole sevens program of 4.2 million. And that's in an Olympic year when you would have had accommodation in Paris, all that kind of flights, everything.
Yeah.
All that malarkey.
Well,
so
okay.
You're talking like less than 5% maybe of the total. The entire sevens program is less than 5% of the total IRFU expenditure. Income. Then if you actually figure, well, okay, by knocking the men's off and keeping the women's, are you only knocking 30% on keeping 70% of the cost there because you're keeping one of the teams and you're keeping the infrastructure for one team as opposed to two teams? So,
that's very interesting, Dara. I didn't have access to those figures, so thank you for that.
I just got them off the website, page 45. If anybody wants to look at them,
I couldn't be arsed. No, I'm not.
Well, I know that. Yes, I know that.
Yeah. All right, okay. But Peter Martin, your thoughts on what Terry Kennedy said and what Dara just kind of backed up or not backed up.
Yeah, it's just basically confirms what we thought to be the case. Star's figures are just basically put up that like the figures are it's small beans, the cutting the men's program. It's just, there's not like I'm just more interested in what was it the player management costs of 38 million.
Yeah, player and management costs.
I'm very
That's for
interested.
the professional games. That's just the men's 15. The women's, the sevens, the underage, and the academies all come under elite player development. They don't come under professional game costs.
Hold on, Justin. Do you understand that particular figure, the 38 million, the player management fees? Is that wages? I presume that's wages, is it?
It'd be wages, it'd be travel, it'd be pension, it'd be all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay.
And 180 professional players in Ireland, and they're men's players.
Yeah, and you got to remember as well. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game. So I mean, again, I don't play devil's advocate here. And again, I want to reiterate. I'm a big fan of sevens and the development that it can do. I can understand where they've gone with this. I do think there was a possibility of a third way, but you've also, running any business, and this is a business, right? You've got a plan for the now, for the medium term and the long term, right? If there's another COVID next year, you've got to have money in the bank to do those things. And in fairness to the RFFU, they've been very good historically at being cautious. Right, and it's making sure, if you look at the Aviva now, had we jumped in, and timing's a great thing, and done what the SRU done and build Murrayfield, and that's been the millstone around their neck in terms of timing and cost and debt and all the rest of it. So in fairness to the Blazers in Irish rugby, they've managed this path so that we have had money and resources to do things when we've needed to do them. Much better than the Scots, much better than the Welsh, and arguably the English.
A golden Labrador would do a better job than the Welsh, in fairness, Justin.
That's another conversation for another time.
A conversation for another time, indeed, yes. Mike Reedy, quickly your thoughts on this, because a couple of things I just want to talk about before we run out of time. Go on, Mike.
I would say, going on what Justin just said there, the Irish business model has been the flagship, or has been the envy of basically world rugby over the last number of years. Are we now faced with a situation that's the writing could be on the wall? By the way, maybe it hasn't been as rosy in the top ranks as we all think it has, and there has to be cuts made somewhere. So maybe the coffers aren't as healthy as we all like to think.
I wouldn't start panicking yet, Mike. You're like your man out of Dad's army. Don't panic.
Yeah.
The
no
financial
panic.
statements have to be audited every year. So, what was it? New Zealand Rugby came out and said they'd made a slight loss of 19.5 million last year. Just a slight one. But yes. There'd be people going through the accounts and checking how much they have in the banks and all that kind of stuff. So, it's not like a house of cards that's going to come down now all of a sudden.
No, absolutely not. Anyway, okay, moving on. Well, I think we spent the as I said to you all, the show would be dominated by the sevens issue. Anyway, moving on from the sevens. Justin, the game, there was initially an article I read that was by a journalist who will not be mentioned, who is not very well liked. He's an English guy, often slagged in the group. And he said at the time that the Lions v Argentina game was just it not demeaned, but it took away from the gloss of the Lions tour. And I didn't agree with it at the time, but I was kind of thinking, what is the point of it? Is it just a money-making exercise out there? But in the Aviva, I'm trying to think, why would the Lions play Argentina in the Aviva? What's the point of it? Just
so right off the bat, couldn't disagree anymore. Right? I think it's for a number of different reasons a great idea. We've got to recognise what while it's four countries molded into one. So you've got a higher level of a group there. You've got to bring them together, right? And this gives one extra opportunity to do that, and it's not a foregone conclusion. I mean, the first time this happened, Argentina beat the Lions, right? They're coming, they run us close in November. They shellacked Australia last season. They're a semi-final team more often than not in a World Cup. They're a good, strong rugby playing country, and then you look at it. Well, not everyone's got the opportunity to go down to Australia or to New Zealand or South Africa to see the Lions play, but it's within the reach of a lot more people to come to Dublin and watch that and watch the Lions and really taste that atmosphere. So, I think, from a practicality of preparing the team, it's invaluable. It gives a pressured but not critical opportunity for Farrell to test what he's doing, how he's doing it, different combinations. Hopefully they win and they can bounce on from that, but it's not the end of the world if they don't, right? It's not part of the real tour, so to speak. So I think it's great. I'm sure I'll be very jealous watching it on telly. I'm sure the atmosphere will be absolutely electric. So I think it's a win-win-win on all levels for the players, the supporters, and great for us to be hosting it in Dublin.
Oh, okay, very good. Okay, Justin, thank you for that. Mike Reedy, your thoughts on this? I think this is the whole point of the show and the group and all that. Everyone has an opinion. I think it's a waste of time. Right? Justin completely disagrees. Mike, what do you think?
I wouldn't say it's a waste of time, Peter. I think I agree with Justin.
Well, we're more a money making exercise.
Of course, yeah, and that's after what we've all been discussing just throughout the program. Very, very valid. But is it also given Argentina an opportunity to see what they can do against the Lions? I mean, is there a...
But for what, though? For what reason?
I'll tell you for what reason. Is there a danger? Let's see how this tour goes in Australia and how much interest it generates in Australia. Is there a likelihood in the future that we could be touring Argentina instead of one of the other nations or something like that? It could give them an opportunity. Something they've actually earned the right to play against a team like the Lions. Argentina have, by virtue of being in, like Justin just said, almost serial semi-finalists in the World Cup. So fair play to them. I don't think let's be honest, lads. Any rugby game, anytime is never a bad idea, is it?
No, a very good point, Mike. Peter Martin, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would broadly agree with what Justin has said. Is that it works from so many different points of view. A Lions game in Dublin, well, that's a novelty. Obviously, there's a certain amount of people who will never get to see a Lions game or get to support a Lions team. And obviously, look, it's a very good preparation. My question is, and I think this was shared various over the last number of weeks on the group, and I don't have it to hand, but what is the ticketing pricing like?
Fucking astronomical.
I don't know that.
So I would say for all that is, and I think, gentlemen, that is the sting in the tail, unfortunately, about this particular game, is that it ticks so many good damn boxes, but they had to go and kind of practically almost ruin it. It hasn't happened yet, obviously, so we don't know. But the prices are goddamn stupid.
Well, hold on a second, Pete. Dara, what did you just say there for the ticket pricing?
About €200.
Which is the same price for the South Africa tour coming up in November to get into the Aviva. €202.
I'll give you the answer to this, Peter. You're lucky. I just have the full answer for you.
Go ahead.
You should be reading less of the Guardian. That's bad for you, because they never complained about when it was in Twickers or when it was in Cardiff or when it was in Edinburgh. The reason why you have these home Lions games, and it used to be stop off in Hong Kong on the way out to Hong Kong, partly to let the team experience a semi-friendly audience, with the crowd behind them, because most of the time they're playing in enemy territory. They're the visitors. They don't have full support. But unfortunately, a major reason for it is the advertising, the sponsors of the Lions. They want to bring people along. The sponsors are mostly British and Irish based. They want to bring people to a match. They don't want to fucking fly people all the way out to New Zealand or South Africa or Australia. Well, only their favourite people who spend millions with them. So the rest of them, they bring them to Lansdowne or to Twickenham or to Murrayfield or to Cardiff. And they bring them to that. I mean, I remember seeing I think it was Edinburgh, the Lions went to before they toured the last time. And a friend of a friend worked for what used to be Scottish Provident. I forget what they're called now, but they were previous Lions sponsors. They had about 4,000 tickets for that game.
Oh, so, right. Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right. Before we go into our onto our last topic, which is the win, lose, or draw for the games coming up this weekend, just a couple of comments. Kieran Ryan, hello again, Kieran. Not many get to see the Lions game in Dublin. Great idea, but again, genuine rugby supporters price out of buying tickets. What you were saying, Jara and Pete. How many of Lions will be available to play in that game? A very good question, Kieran. I've no idea. Bevan Marie, not everyone can afford to go to Australia. It's 3,000 just for flights before even considering match tickets, hotels, etc. Plus, it will be good for the young fans. But it won't be the Lions team that will be playing Australia. They will field their second team, as it isn't only 6 days after the URC final. Yes, good point, Bevan. Okay, Justin, we are over the hour mark as always. Let me just go to you, Justin, for win, lose, or draw for the games coming up this weekend. An important round in the URC for one or two teams. So first up, in the order they're happening, Justin, we have Edinburgh playing your old team, Ulster. Edinburgh at home, Justin.
Yeah, difficult one. Well, you got 10 versus 12 in the league. Probably neither of them making the playoffs. A good amount of change happening in Ulster for next season. So you've got that unpredictability to it, in so much as you've got guys that are leaving. Are they playing for a contract? Have they already got it? Are they looking for the season to go? Are they looking to finish on a high? And the guys that are staying, looking to push ahead for next season. So difficult one to call, but I'm going to go with my heart and go with Ulster.
Okay. But you got a couple of good props coming in next season, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, chatting with Hugh McGahey, who I know very well, I'm optimistic of the outlook for Ulster, right, for next season. I don't say we're going to win the URC, from here to next season, but the outlook over the next few seasons. And I think, based on what we were talking about the last time I was on the show, how much money's being allocated in grants, I think it was north of £500,000 sterling to the pathway with schools and clubs and stuff. That takes time to deliver, but it's a journey. You want to start yesterday, and they've started it. So I think the future's bright there. Even if it doesn't turn around, immediately,
which it rarely does. Okay,
exactly.
Okay, Justin. The second game that's on, we have a must-win for Munster. They are entertaining Benetton.
Munster, I wouldn't bet against them. They're on that cusp for the playoffs at home. Coming off an important win last weekend, I see Munster doing a number. Difficult game, but at home, got to back them.
Okay, Zebre are taking on Connacht. Zebre at home.
I mean, a bit like the Ulster game. You've got players leaving, you've got new coaching staff going. Things in flux. So difficult one to call. Although with I'm right in saying that hasn't been announced a Connacht head coach, or did I misunderstand that yet for next season?
I don't think so.
No.
I think you're
So
right. I think you're right on that. Yeah.
I wouldn't bet against the men from the West then. Those that are staying and have probably already been contracted will be looking to place themselves on the totem pole. So again, I'd go with Connacht in a very, very close game.
Okay, and finally, Justin, Leinster at home to Glasgow.
Well, it's all on the URC now, isn't it? So no other distractions. I think,
No.
although it's top of the table clash, 1 versus 3, I think Leinster will shellac Glasgow.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, Mike Reedy, to you. Win, lose, or draw, Mike. Edinburgh versus Ulster.
I hope Ulster go and do a number in Edinburgh.
Yeah, I know. Hope is great. We can all hope to win the lotto. Who do you think is going to?
I have without much conviction. I'm going to go with Ulster without much conviction.
So a close game then, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely a close game. Yeah.
All right. Okay. As I said to Justin, a must-win game for Munster against Benetton. Munster at home, Mike.
Tough game, by the way. Benetton are on a high, and so are Munster. It's going to be a close one again, but I'll go with the home team. I'll go with Munster.
Surprise. Okay, Mike, Zebra entertaining Connacht.
Well, if Zebra play it like they did last weekend, I think Connacht have a great fucking chance, even in Italy.
Well, they had decent opposition last weekend, in fairness.
I know they had, but I mean,
yeah, Connacht
they're not a terrible team. I'll go with Connacht. I'm going to go with Connacht. I hope Connacht anyway.
All right. And finally, Mike, Leinster are entertaining Glasgow.
Well, going on last weekend's results, lads, fucking Glasgow are in free fall, so they could fall out with it. I don't think they're not going to fall out the top 4, but they won't be getting second anyway. So yeah, Leinster by probably I don't know. It won't be as big a score as last weekend, but it'll be a big enough one.
Yeah, sure. Did we nail them in the?
They only scored one fucking try in against Benetton, like lads. They could get nilled again.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Peter Martin. Edinburgh entertaining Ulster.
Yeah, look, I'll go with Ulster. They have to get the results somewhere, so pressure's off in Edinburgh. So let's hope they'll pull one out of the bag.
Okay, Munster at home to Benetton. Pete?
Yeah, Munster have to back the boys in red. I saw the team that they've named. It's very strong.
Unchanged.
Yeah, Craig Casey getting 100 caps. So, yeah.
I think John Klein is getting 150 caps, if I read that right. I think. Okay, Pete, Zebra playing Connacht. Zebra.
Yeah, Connacht, I think, will do it over there.
Okay, and finally, Pete, your team, my team, and Dara's team. Leinster are entertaining Glasgow.
Yeah, strong performance. Put 40 points on them at least.
Do you think?
All
right. Okay. Thanks, Pete. Hold on. We have Mike Sheedy, of course, Mike being a good Munster man. Munster win, a few more players are back, and it's looking like Munster did 2 years ago. Don't know about that, Mike. Kieran Ryan heading to Musgrave tomorrow night. Munster to win and give Palm a massive send-off. Yeah, I hope he does get a massive send-off, by the way. Okay, Dara Weston, last voice on the show. Edinburgh v Ulster.
Yeah, I would go Ulster.
Okay. Munster have to win it against Benetton.
She's not here at the moment, so technically I could, I'm not contractually obliged. But and also the fact they're playing on the plastic pitch. I don't.
Go on, the Cork wife is away. The Cork wife is away. You could say Benetton.
I thought it was it Wi-Fi?
I can't bring myself to say it. No, I think it'll be fairly close, though. I think it'll be a lot closer than they expect.
But
so they might just squeeze through. I'd say Munster probably squeeze through, but less than a score. I'd say less than 5.
Okay, Zebra playing Connacht, Dara.
Connacht.
All right, and last but not least, Leinster entertaining Glasgow in the Aviva.
It's going to be a tough game, but I think Leinster will do it. I think when they're in third place, I know Mike said they're a team in decline, but they're still in third place. It's and you can turn around a decline when you're that high up on a league table. So, I think it'd be tough. I wouldn't be going along expecting to zero them, but I think
no,
Leinster
I
win it
wouldn't
anyway.
say so. Yeah, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, that is all we have time for this evening. My thanks are to all of you for watching and sending in your comments and your opinions. Thank you for that. My thanks also to Dara Weston and I forget your dog's name, Dara.
Basil.
Basil. Dara and Basil right there. My thanks to both. My thanks also to Peter Martin. My thanks also are to Mike Reedy and a returning guest. He is always welcome to join us on the show, is Justin Fitzpatrick. And if you want to read any of Justin's articles, which I would highly recommend, they're very good. They're on his LinkedIn profile and they're also all on ruckthis.ie webpage. Justin, thank you very much for your time and your comments, your knowledge. It's always a pleasure to have you on. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Justin.
Not at all. Gentlemen,
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks all again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. All
Thanks
right?
very much, boys.
We'll talk again.
Thanks
you.
also.
Here, guys.